Today, I'm going to be canning some nourishing bone broth and some homemade tomato sauce. The whole process is super fun and easy, and I have some really neat tools to show you that makes everything run way smoother. So come along with me and let's have some fun in the kitchen. We are going to start with some beef soup bones that we got from our half a cow order back in the spring. I decided to use 3 packages this time, along with some carrots, the tops and skins, and weird bits that I've been keeping in a bag in the freezer. I like to use bay leaves. You can also add some whole black peppercorns, and you can add celery. I didn't have any on hand, so I used these celery flakes, and I chopped up an onion and added him in there as well. One of my amazing tools that makes bone broth so much easier is this countertop roaster oven. They're pretty easy to find, especially at thrift stores and antique stores. That's where I found this one, and it was such a good deal. It had maybe been used one time, if even that, and I have used it so many times and roasted things for so long in it, and it works wonderfully. This is a really great tool to have for not just bone broth, but all kinds of things. Something that you definitely want to add to your bone broth is some apple cider vinegar. This really helps to get into the bones and pull out all of that gelatin, that good, healthy stuff that you want in your bone broth. So make sure that you don't forget your apple cider vinegar. I just filled up with water all the way to the tip top, pretty much as it would go. And I like to set it to 250. Sometimes I'll bump it down to 225 and let it go. I prefer to do at least 24 hours. You can do less time than that as well. But the longer that you roast your bones, the more gelatinous, good bone broth you will get. And as you can see, this one went for quite a while. It's really dark. I don't think it was quite 72 hours, maybe closer to 36. And as you can see, it's nice dark bone broth. So you can use just a fine mesh strainer for when you're using your bone broth, but I feel like using the cheesecloth just bumps it up an extra. You don't get quite as many as those bits in there, and I had done that before previously, just use the fine mesh strainer, and I probably will in the future too, but this time I wanted to use the cheesecloth to get any of those extra little guys out that I could. And it worked great to get all that out. So a really good trick that you can use for your bone broth is after you strain it, get it into your containers and then pop it in your refrigerator for 24 hours. This will make the fat layer on top completely harden, and it is so much easier to scrape off instead of sitting there and scraping liquid off of liquid, in my opinion. It kind of broke up a little bit here, so I had to get out the baby fine mesh strainer, but you can see it worked really well to get all that fat off. It was a lot easier to get off in the jars because it stayed in bigger chunks like this too. And I was adding it to a crock pot to render down a bit so I could save that tallow for cooking. And another great canning tip that I have recently learned and want to pass on to you is warming your jars in the oven on a cookie sheet. I set it at 225 for at least 10 minutes, but it's usually just the very first thing that I do before I start warming up my item that I'm going to can and my water in my canner. That way you don't have to worry about pouring hot water in and out of jars. And if you're like me, pouring it all down your arm, it's a little uncomfortable. So just keep the jars right there in the oven. I usually pop out 2 at a time to keep all the other ones nice and hot. And you're not working around rattling jars until they're all in there and ready to go. With my bone broth, I normally don't salt it. I didn't this time. You can totally put salt in your bone broth. I just prefer to wait until I'm cooking with it and add my salt then. So make sure to wipe your rims off with vinegar. Use new lids. Do not use your canning lids. Use new lids anytime you're pressure or water bath canning, and get your rings on finger tight. A really good item that I love to use my bone broth for, besides soup and a lot of other things, but my favorite lately is using it for rice and quinoa. I have some really picky little toddlers sometimes, and sometimes the rice is the only thing that they eat. So I feel way better about cooking it with a nourishing, healthy nutrient-rich bone broth instead of just cooking their rice with water. Because if that's all they're going to eat, I feel good about it knowing that they're getting some good nutrition into their bodies through that bone broth. Also, when you open your pressure canner or water bath canner, make sure that you open the lid away from your face. And this is what our bone broth looks like. It's still super dark. I've never made one this dark before, and I'm really proud of it. The taste of it is phenomenal. It tastes so nice, and all my jars sealed. I was really lucky. Nothing cracked. Nothing popped open on me. Everything sealed really nicely. I actually made this bone broth on the left in August, and I only used one package of those beef bones, and I think I only did it 24 hours, maybe even less than that. And you could see such a big difference in the color, and you can taste it as well. These are all of our tomatoes from our garden this summer, and they have been inside of the freezer way too long. We are past due on getting them made into tomato sauce here. This is my gigantic 40-quart stock pot. She's the beast, and I'm so excited I can use her on my new oven here. And I actually had to take some of the tomatoes out because I filled it way too high. They shrink so much when you cook them down, but I didn't have a spoon large enough to get all the way to the bottom, and I didn't want anything to scorch on me. When you're cooking down your tomatoes like this, be sure to try and puncture them and squeeze them out as well so everything can get all nice and warmed up before we run them through the next machine that makes tomato sauce so much easier. As you can see, I didn't skin or core or do anything except wash and freeze these tomatoes. I did nothing extra to them. Usually that's a big headache, is having to skin them all, but I have a wonderful machine right here called the Weston. It's a strainer. It has so many attachments for so many different things that you can strain. And you just put it all into the hopper, a big bowl in the top, any of your item. I poured my hot cooked tomatoes in there. And as you can see, there's a lot of juice because they were frozen, but you'll see I strained out the sauce here. The great thing with the Weston is it separates all of the skin, all of the seeds, all of the cores, any blemishes, anything on it, from your nice pure tomato sauce. And you can actually take that pulp that's coming out and run it through multiple times as well. So to get all that extra liquid out of my sauce, I just used a fine mesh strainer and kind of forced some of it through till I felt like it got enough of the liquid out. And each time I poured it out of the strainer, I thought that it still looked way too liquidy, and I was shocked at how thick and good and saucy it was coming out. I even cooked it down a little bit more before I went ahead and canned it, but it was such a good sauce. It feels so good knowing it came from tomatoes that we grew in our garden. I also saved and canned some tomato juice that I've never saved or canned or used before, so I'm excited to do something new with that. And this is my cousin Heather. She had never canned before and wanted to learn how. So she told me the next time I was canning something to give her a heads up and let her know, and she wanted to come over and learn. So if you have somebody in your life that cans and you want to learn how to can, and you're like me, where you learn better with hands-on experience instead of just watching something or reading a recipe, and you just want that confidence with having somebody teach you how to do it, ask your friend or family member or whoever you know that cans. More than likely, if they can, they enjoy doing it, and it would be something that I'm sure they would love to share with you. Anybody that I know likes to can. We talk about it all the time. We enjoy canning, so I know that any of my friends that do it, they would love to be able to teach and show somebody else how, and have already showed multiple other people how to do it. This was the first time too with canning tomatoes, and something that I needed a little bit more acidity for, that I did not actually have lemon juice. We had a bit of a snowy, sort of blizzardy day going on, so I really didn't want to leave just to go get lemon juice. And I actually had citric acid on hand, which my recipe that I used for my tomato sauce said that I could also use citric acid for. So I ended up using that with salt and some Italian seasoning in each of the jars. And as you can see, Heather picked up quick. She's already a pro, got the lids on finger tight, and we got our tomato sauce going. Oh, I used my pressure canner for this, and with the pressure canner as a water bath canner, you don't have to seal the lid down, which I love that it's multi-purpose to use for both. We did great. All the tomatoes sealed wonderfully, no issues at all. I'm so grateful to have all those tomatoes out of my freezer and on my shelf and something we can use right away. If you want to see some more canning videos, check out this one next. Thank you for watching, and remember to live free and find your purpose.